was sitting in the cafeteria of Toronto Western Hospital at 3 in the morning, staring at a vending machine coffee I couldn't drink, when the charge nurse sat down across from me and said 5 words that split my life in half. "Your daughter-in-law is poisoning her." She said it the way you'd say, "pass the sugar." Flat. Certain. Like she'd been holding it in for hours and couldn't carry it another second. I opened my mouth, but she grabbed my forearm and squeezed. "Don't stand up. Don't look toward the hallway. Your daughter-in-law went to the washroom 2 minutes ago, and if she comes back and sees us sitting together like this, everything falls apart." I thought this woman had lost her mind. My daughter-in-law had ridden in the ambulance with my wife. She'd been pacing the waiting area for 4 hours, calling family, updating our neighbors, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket. But the nurse wasn't guessing. She had a file folder under her arm, and when she opened it and pointed to a line on the toxicology printout, I felt the floor tilt under my chair. 20 minutes later, I was in a windowless room with a Toronto police detective, looking at numbers on a screen that told me the woman my son married had been feeding my wife arsenic for the better part of a year. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Because at 3 in the morning in Toronto, I was just a retired man praying his wife would make it through the night. I had no idea I was about to uncover the coldest betrayal I've ever known. My name is Cliff. I'm 64 years old, and for most of my adult life, things went the way they were supposed to. I spent 31 years as a pipe fitter with Local 46 out of Hamilton, worked my way up to site supervisor, and retired at 60 with a full pension, a paid-off house in Burlington, and rental income from 2 duplexes I'd bought in the 90s, when you could still find something decent in the Golden Horseshoe for under $200,000. Those properties are worth close to $1.8 million now. Not because I'm some genius investor, but because I showed up, did the maintenance, and never sold when the market dipped. Everything I built beside my wife. June and I got married in 1984 at a little United Church in Dundas. She was 22. I was 23. She just finished her ECE diploma at Mohawk College, and I was 3 years into my apprenticeship, coming home every night smelling like pipe dope and sweat. She didn't care. She'd heat up whatever was in the slow cooker, pour 2 glasses of something cheap, and we'd sit on the back porch of our first apartment watching the sun go down over the escarpment. 40 years of that. 40 years of mortgage payments, school concerts, ER visits with kids who fell off bikes, holidays at the cottage near Bob Cajun, arguments about money that always ended the same way because June was right and I was stubborn. And eventually, I'd come around. She was my compass. I don't say that to be poetic. I mean it literally. Every decision I made, I checked against her judgment first, and when I didn't, I regretted it. About 10 months before that night in the hospital, June started getting sick. Nothing alarming at first. She was tired after walks, queasy after supper, dizzy when she stood up too fast. Our family doctor in Burlington ran blood work, sent her for scans at Joseph Brand. The results were odd but not conclusive. They checked her thyroid, tested for lupus, screened for MS. Nothing fit. The symptoms would fade for a week, then come roaring back worse than before. She lost 22 pounds in 5 months. Her color went gray. This was a woman who used to snowshoe 3 kilometers through Bronte Creek every January morning before breakfast, and now she couldn't get from the bedroom to the kitchen without holding the wall. Our son Darren was 36. He'd married a woman named Ingrid 3 years earlier. She was 33, originally from Kitchener, university educated, sharp as a tack. She'd worked in pharmaceutical sales for a company out of Mississauga for 8 years before getting laid off in a round of restructuring. Darren had left a decent job in logistics to start a consulting business that hadn't taken off yet. They were burning through savings. 6 months before June got sick, Darren asked if they could move into the basement apartment of our Burlington house while they got back on their feet. June had reservations. That woman asked too many questions about things that aren't her business, June told me one evening after Ingrid had spent dinner asking about our rental properties, our pension income, our RRSP withdrawals. She wants to know where every dollar is, and she married a man who doesn't have any. So what's she calculating? I told June she was reading into it. Ingrid was educated, detail-oriented, practical. Those are good qualities in a daughter-in-law. She came from a respectable family. Her father was an engineer. She'd done well in her career. Just because she was direct about finances didn't make her scheming. There's a difference between curious and calculating, June said. That girl counts the silver every time she sets the table. I should have listened. 40 years of marriage, and June had never once been wrong about a person's character. Not once. But I didn't listen because the accusation felt unfair, and I didn't want my son's marriage to start with his mother's suspicion. So when June collapsed on a Wednesday evening in our kitchen, dropping a pot of soup that shattered on the tile and sent broth across the floor, and Ingrid screamed and called 911 while Darren caught his mother's head before it hit the counter, I had no reason to think anything except that whatever mysterious illness had been draining my wife was finally trying to finish the job. The paramedics got her to Toronto Western because Burlington's ER was backed up, and they wanted a toxicology unit. They stabilized her, ran fluids, drew blood. The attending physician told me June was showing signs of multi-organ stress, but they needed further testing. Darren sat in the chair beside me, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Ingrid paced near the elevators, dabbing her eyes, calling her mother in Kitchener. She's going to be fine, Dad, Darren said. Mom's the toughest person I know. She is, I agreed. But you can't fight what you can't see. I didn't know how true that was. It was some time past 2 in the morning when the charge nurse, a woman named Agatha, asked me to come with her to discuss my wife's medication history. Routine enough, I followed her. She walked past the nurse's station, past the supply room, and into the staff cafeteria, which was empty at that hour except for a man mopping near the kitchen. She sat down across from me at a corner table and opened the file folder. Mr. Faulkner, how long has your wife been unwell? 10 months. And your daughter-in-law lives with you? In the basement, yes. She and my son. Why? Your wife's blood panel is showing elevated arsenic levels. Significantly elevated. I didn't react because I didn't understand. Arsenic was something from old detective novels, not from real life in Burlington, Ontario. Arsenic is odorless and nearly tasteless in small amounts, Agatha continued. Administered gradually over months, it produces exactly the symptoms your wife has been presenting. Fatigue, nausea, weight loss, peripheral neuropathy, skin discoloration. It mimics a dozen conditions, which is why her doctors haven't been able to pin it down. That's not possible. Nobody in my house would. Mr. Faulkner, I've been a nurse for 26 years. I transferred here from a hospital in Winnipeg where I saw 2 cases just like this. Both times it was someone in the home. Someone with regular access to the patient's food and drink. I've already called hospital security and they've contacted Toronto Police. 40 minutes later, I was in a small office off the security wing with Detective Anwar Hussain, a lean man in his 40s with reading glasses and a quiet voice that made everything he said sound twice as serious. He showed me the lab results on his laptop. June's arsenic levels were 6 times normal. Someone has been giving your wife small, consistent doses over many months, he said. This is deliberate. The pattern is what we call chronic arsenicosis. It's designed to look like natural decline. Who? My voice broke. That's what we need to determine, but I want you to think carefully. Who prepares your wife's meals? Who handles her drinks? Her vitamins? It settled on me like a stone in my chest. Ingrid had taken over the cooking 5 months ago. She'd insisted June needed rest. She made June's morning tea, her evening chamomile, her smoothies. She picked up June's prescriptions from the Shoppers Drug Mart on Brand Street. She organized June's pill case every Sunday night. Every act of devotion was really an act of destruction. My daughter-in-law, I said, she does everything. She cooks, she makes the tea, she handles my wife's supplements. Hussain nodded. What's her professional background? Pharmaceutical sales, 8 years. She'd know what these substances do. She'd know the dosing. That's consistent, he said. But knowing and proving are 2 different things. Here's what I'd like to do. We test food and drink containers from your home. We install surveillance in your kitchen. We monitor her purchases and communications. In the meantime, your wife stays in hospital where she's safe. And I just go home and pretend everything's normal? You go home and help us catch the person who's been slowly killing your wife. If we move too fast, evidence disappears. She hires a lawyer, argues environmental contamination, old pipes, natural sources. A good defense attorney turns reasonable doubt into acquittal, and the poisoning starts again, maybe with someone who doesn't survive. I thought of June lying in that hospital bed, gray-skinned, 22 pounds lighter than the woman who used to hike the Bruce Trail without breaking stride. Do what you need to do, I said. I'll hold it together. One more thing, Hussein said. Don't tell your son. We haven't determined whether he's involved or being used. Either way, if he knows, she'll know within the hour. That was the part that nearly broke me, sitting across from Darren in the waiting room, watching him cry about his mother and not knowing whether my own son was part of it. June spent 5 days in hospital. The medical team, now aware of the arsenic, treated her with chelation therapy and told Darren and Ingrid she had a severe B12 deficiency complicated by a rare inflammatory condition. Ingrid visited every day. She brought butter tarts from a bakery on Queen Street. She fluffed June's pillows. She asked the nurses intelligent questions about recovery timelines. She was magnificent, and every second of it was theater. On the 4th day, June was strong enough for the truth. I waited until Darren and Ingrid left for lunch, closed the door, and sat on the edge of her bed. June, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay very still. She looked at me with those dark eyes that had seen through every excuse, every half-truth, every well-meaning lie I'd attempted in 4 decades of marriage. I already know something's wrong, Cliff. You haven't been eating. You watch Ingrid like she's a stranger. You barely sleep. Tell me. So I told her, the arsenic, the detective, the surveillance plan. I watched her face move through shock, fury, grief, and then a calm so absolute it frightened me. I told you, she said. Last spring, I sat at that kitchen table and told you that woman was calculating something. You said I was being unfair. You were right. I was wrong. I'm sorry, June. She squeezed my hand. I could feel how thin her fingers had become. Don't be sorry. Be useful. We're going to catch her. And when we do, I want to be sitting right there watching. When June came home after a week, the trap was ready. Hussein's team had installed pinhole cameras in our kitchen, covering every angle. The counter, the stove, the kettle, the cupboard where June kept her herbal tea. A tech specialist had set up monitoring on her home Wi-Fi to flag any suspicious searches from Ingrid's devices. The first 4 days, nothing. Ingrid cooked, cleaned, fussed over June, played the role with precision. I started to doubt everything. Maybe the arsenic came from somewhere else. Old insulation. The well water at the cottage. Maybe I was tearing my family apart for nothing. On the 5th morning, my phone buzzed at 6:15. Hussein, we have her. The kitchen camera had recorded Ingrid at 5:20 in the morning. Before anyone else was up, she opened the cupboard, took down June's box of red rose tea, and pulled a small vial from the pocket of her housecoat. She twisted off the cap, tapped a measure of grayish powder into 3 tea bags using a tiny funnel no bigger than a thimble, and resealed each bag with a careful pinch. The whole process took less than 90 seconds. She'd done it before, many times. We've also pulled her purchase records, Hussein continued. She's been ordering arsenic trioxide from a chemical supply company in the States. Ships it to a P.O. box in Hamilton under a fake name. The purchase dates match your wife's symptom timeline almost exactly. 9 months of orders. Does my son know? We've monitored his phone and email. No indication he's aware. But there's something else. Hussein played a phone recording. Ingrid had called her older sister in Kitchener 2 days earlier. It won't be much longer, Ingrid's voice said. Calm, conversational, like she was talking about a renovation timeline. The doctors are baffled. Once she's gone, Darren inherits the house, the duplexes, the pension survivor benefit, the RRSPs. Ontario's an equalization province, so when I file for divorce, I walk away with half of his share. I've already talked to a family lawyer. And Darren suspects nothing? Her sister asked. Darren thinks his mother has some mystery disease. He cries about it. He's sweet. He's also not very bright. After she's gone, I'll give it 8 months, maybe a year, then file. Irreconcilable differences. I'll take my share and start over in Vancouver. That's ice cold, Ingrid. That's planning. I had to put the phone down. I walked to the kitchen sink and stood there gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles were white. This woman had married my son like an investor acquiring a company. She'd moved into our home as a staging area. She'd been poisoning my wife with the patience and precision of someone who saw murder as a financial transaction. Not cold, planning. Those two words would stay with me for the rest of my life. Hussein gave me a choice. Arrest her immediately, or wait for one more documented dose to make the prosecution bulletproof. Every part of me wanted to walk downstairs and drag her out of that basement apartment by the collar of her housecoat. But I heard June's voice in my head. Be useful. One more dose, I said, but my wife doesn't drink that tea. Already handled. Constable Voss will enter your home each morning at 5 o'clock through the side door. He'll swap the contaminated tea bags for clean ones before your wife wakes up. She drinks safe tea. Ingrid thinks the plan is working, and we build an airtight case. For 3 more mornings, Ingrid performed her ritual. 5:20. Kitchen, vial, funnel, tea bags. Every morning at 5, Constable Voss had already been and gone, replacing the poison bags with fresh ones. June drank clean tea and put on the performance of her life, wincing at breakfast, moving slowly, gripping the counter when she stood. Maybe you should stay in bed today, Mom, Ingrid said on the 3rd morning, pouring June's tea with steady hands. I'll bring this up to you. You're too good to me, honey, June replied, and she took that cup of tea from the woman who had been trying to murder her for 9 months, and smiled at her with a warmth that should have won her a Genie Award. On day 6, Hussein called. We have more than enough. 8 separate poisoning events on camera. 9 months of purchase records. The recorded phone call with her sister outlining premeditated murder and financial motive. I've been doing this for 18 years, Mr. Faulkner. This is as solid a case as I've ever built. When? Tomorrow evening. I'd like you and your wife to invite your son and daughter-in-law upstairs for dinner. We make the arrest at the table. It's controlled, it's contained, and it gives us the chance to separate Darren from Ingrid so we can see his reaction in real time. That evening, June cooked for the first time in months. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, roasted carrots and parsnips, and a blueberry crumble from berries she'd frozen last August at the cottage. She moved slowly, still weak, but there was something behind her eyes I hadn't seen in almost a year. If this is the last meal I ever make for that woman, June said, pulling the chicken out of the oven, it's going to be the best thing she's ever tasted in my kitchen. Darren was thrilled when he came upstairs and saw the table set. Mom, you're cooking? You look so much better. Whatever those new supplements are, they're really working. Something's definitely working, June said, and she caught my eye across the kitchen. We sat down at the same table where June had collapsed 7 weeks earlier. The same table where Ingrid had screamed and dialed 911, performing panic she didn't feel because she'd caused the collapse and was waiting for it. Ingrid complimented the chicken. She poured wine. She told a story about a dog she'd seen at the park. She was warm, funny, attentive, the perfect daughter-in-law. If I hadn't seen the surveillance footage with my own eyes, I might have believed every word. Halfway through dinner, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said. Detective Hussein stood on my front porch with 2 uniformed officers. Behind them, the street was quiet. February in Burlington. Snow on the lawns. A neighbor's porch light flickering. Mr. Faulkner, is everyone home? Come in, detective. Darren looked confused when 3 police officers walked into our dining room. Ingrid went still. Not confused, not alarmed. Still. The way a fox freezes when it hears a branch snap, calculating whether to run or fight. Dad, what's going on? Darren stood up. Sit down, son. Please. Ingrid Sullivan, Hussein said, stepping forward. You're under arrest for the attempted murder of June Faulkner by means of arsenic poisoning. You have the right to retain and instruct counsel without delay. The room cracked open. Darren shouted. Ingrid screamed. The officers moved in with handcuffs, and June sat at the head of her table, hands folded in her lap, watching the woman who had spent 9 months trying to kill her get exactly what she had coming. This is insane, Ingrid cried, twisting away from the officer's grip. I would never hurt Mom. Tell them, Darren. Tell them I love this family. Darren turned to me. His face was white. Dad, what is this? There has to be a mistake. Ingrid wouldn't. It's not a mistake, son. I took a breath. Sit down. You need to see something. Hussein set up a laptop on the dining table between the plates and the gravy boat. He played the kitchen footage. 5:20 in the morning, Ingrid in her housecoat, the vial, the funnel, the tea bags opened and resealed. 8 separate mornings. 8 separate doses. Darren watched without blinking. His eyes moved from the screen to Ingrid and back, like his mind couldn't connect the woman on the video with the woman he'd married. Then Hussein played the phone call. Once she's gone, Darren inherits the house, the duplexes, the pension survivor benefit, the RRSPs, the casual voice, the cold arithmetic. That's not cold. That's planning. Darren made a sound I'd never heard from him. Not a word, not a cry. Something from deeper than that. He turned to Ingrid, who had stopped struggling against the handcuffs. Her face had gone blank. The performance was over, and underneath it, there was nothing. No remorse. No shame. Just the flat expression of someone whose investment had gone bad. Is it true? Ingrid looked at him the way you'd look at a spreadsheet that didn't balance. You wouldn't understand. You've never had to build anything yourself. Everything you have, someone gave you. I had to find another way. Another way? June's voice cut across the room, quiet and hard as lake ice. You call poisoning me for 9 months finding a way? I let you into my home. I treated you like a daughter. I bit my tongue when my gut told me something was wrong because I didn't want to hurt my son's marriage. And you repaid me by trying to put me in the ground so you could cash out. I did what made sense. No. June stood up from her chair, 5'3", 63 years old, 22 pounds lighter than she should have been, and more formidable than anyone in that room. You did what you chose. And now you'll live with that choice in a cell. The officers led Ingrid out the front door. She didn't look back at Darren. She didn't look back at any of us. The door closed and the house went quiet the way it does when something is broken that can never be put back together. Darren sat at the table with tears running into his hands. I didn't know, he kept saying. Dad, Mom, I swear on everything. I didn't know. She made your tea every morning. She drove you to your appointments. She sat with you when you were too tired to get up. I thought she was taking care of you. She was, June said softly, moving to the chair beside him and pulling his head against her shoulder the way she'd done when he was 8 and some kid had stolen his hockey stick at the outdoor rink. She was taking care of getting rid of me. How did I not see it? Because you loved her, I said, and people who love don't expect evil. That's not a weakness, son. That's what makes you decent. She was killing you, Mom, and I was sleeping in the same house without knowing. June held him tighter. You didn't do this. She did. And the fact that she fooled you doesn't make you guilty. It makes you a victim, too. Darren cried into his mother's shoulder for a long time. I sat across from them, watching my wife comfort the son whose wife had tried to murder her, and I understood something about June that 40 years of marriage hadn't fully revealed. Her strength wasn't in surviving the poison. It was in choosing love when bitterness would have been the easiest thing in the world. The trial was at the Superior Court of Justice in Hamilton 6 months later. Ingrid's defense attorney tried to argue environmental contamination. Old houses in Burlington sometimes have arsenic in the soil, he said. It could have entered the home through the water supply, through garden vegetables, through a dozen incidental pathways. The Crown attorney played 8 surveillance videos and the phone recording. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Ingrid guilty on 1 count of attempted murder, 1 count of administering a noxious substance with intent to endanger life, and 1 count of conspiracy. The judge gave her 22 years, with no parole eligibility for 12. Darren filed for divorce the same month as the conviction. He moved out of our basement apartment and into a 1-bedroom in Hamilton near James Street North. He didn't ask me for money. He got a job as a logistics coordinator for a nonprofit that runs food banks across the Golden Horseshoe. It paid less than half what his old corporate job had paid. But when I visited him for the first time and saw the look on his face when he talked about the work, I knew my son was exactly where he needed to be. June's recovery was slow. Arsenic doesn't leave the body quickly. She did 3 months of chelation therapy at a clinic in Toronto, another 4 months of physiotherapy to rebuild the strength the poisoning had stolen. The woman who used to snowshoe 3 kilometers before breakfast had to start with 10 steps to the end of the driveway and back, but every week she went a little further. Every month she got a little stronger. By the time the leaves started turning that October, she was walking the waterfront trail in Spencer Smith Park again, slower than before, but upright and breathing and alive. One evening, about 8 months after the trial, I came home from picking up groceries to find June sitting at the kitchen table with an envelope in front of her. "Letter from the institution," she said. "Ingrid wants to write to Darren. She's asking for my permission." "Your permission?" "Some restorative justice program through correctional service. Ingrid wrote me a 3-page letter about accountability and growth and understanding the harm she caused." "What do you want to do?" June looked at the envelope for a long time. Then she folded her hands over it and let out a breath. "I'm going to write her back," she said. "Not because she deserves it, because I refuse to let that woman turn me into someone who can't show grace. She tried to take my life. I'm not going to let her take my character too. And Darren, that's his decision. He's a grown man. If he wants to read her letters, that's between him and his own conscience. But I told him what I'll tell you. Forgiveness is a road, not a destination. You don't owe it to anyone on their schedule." Last Thanksgiving, the whole family came to the house. Darren brought a pumpkin pie he'd made from scratch. Lopsided, overspiced, crust a little thick, absolutely perfect. Our daughter Allison drove up from Ottawa with her husband and their 2 boys, who spent the entire afternoon running through the backyard and throwing leaves at each other until June turned the garden hose on them in October, and they all screamed and laughed and ran inside, trailing water across the kitchen floor. After the kids were in bed, Darren and I sat on the back porch in the cold, watching our breath cloud under the porch light. The escarpment was dark against the sky, the way it always is in October. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always. When you found out what Ingrid was doing, did you ever think I was part of it?" I owed him the truth. For about a day, I wasn't sure. He nodded slowly. "I don't blame you. In your shoes, I'd have wondered too. But I knew, somewhere underneath the fear, I knew you weren't capable of that. You're June's son. You have her heart. I got your stubbornness too. That's not a bug, son. That's a feature." He laughed. Then he went quiet for a while, staring out at the yard where he'd grown up. "I think about her sometimes," he said. "Not missing her, just trying to figure out how someone can pretend to love you for years while planning something like that. I don't think you'll ever figure that out. And I hope you don't. Understanding that kind of cruelty requires something in your soul that I hope you never develop." He put his hand on my shoulder and left it there. "Thanks for not giving up on me, Dad. That's not something fathers do. Looking back, I made a mistake that nearly cost me the most important person in my life. I ignored the signs because I wanted to believe the best about someone who didn't deserve that belief." June saw the truth. She tried to warn me, and I dismissed her instincts because they made me uncomfortable. "Here's what I learned, and I need you to hear this. When the person who loves you most tells you something is wrong with someone, listen. Not next month. Not when the evidence is impossible to deny. Listen now. Because by the time the evidence is undeniable, the damage may be permanent. Family isn't a title you inherit. It's a commitment you prove every single day. Ingrid had the title. She had the ring, the last name, the seat at our table. But she was never family. She was a predator in a family costume. And the people who actually loved us, Allison driving 5 hours the minute she heard her mother was in hospital, Darren sleeping in a waiting room chair for 3 nights straight, our neighbor Gus bringing soup to the door every evening for 2 weeks without being asked, those were family, not by title, by action. And to anyone watching this who's in a situation where someone close to you is making you sicker, weaker, smaller, more dependent, more confused, and everyone around you thinks that person is wonderful, trust yourself. You are not paranoid. You are not ungrateful. You are not losing your mind. You are seeing what others refuse to see, and that clarity might save your life. June is downstairs right now. I can hear her rattling around in the kitchen making her butter tarts for the church bazaar. Every time I hear that oven door open, I thank God for a charge nurse named Agatha who had the courage to sit down across from a scared old man in an empty cafeteria and tell him the truth. I thank God for a detective who took it seriously, and I thank God that my wife is still here to burn the edges of those tarts the way she always does, and then blame it on me for talking to her while she's baking. She's alive. we're together. And no house, no duplex, no pension, no amount of money in any RRSP on earth is worth more than that. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone close to you that everybody else trusted, but something in your gut told you they were dangerous? Did you listen to that feeling, or did you push it aside? Tell me in the comments, because every story shared is a warning that might save somebody else. If this meant something to you, subscribe to Voices of Uncle Harold. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember what June always says. You can't read someone's heart, but you can watch their hands. What they do when they think nobody's looking tells you everything you need to know. Stay safe, stay sharp, and take care of the people who actually take care of you.